Morena. So I think we're ready to go with our first panel of the day. So our first panel, the kaupapa, is biodiscovery in Aotearoa. So we're crossing back from Aotearoa, from Aussie, coming back to Aotearoa, and we're going to learn about biodiscovery from Aotearoa. Now, so the way the format's going to work, we've got basically till morning tea, which is 11, and we've got Manu's going to give a bit of a 10-minute kōrero just to sort of set the scene a bit for this particular kaupapa. Then each panellist thereafter will have 5 minutes each to tell us who they are, what they do, and what's their message for our hui today. And then we'll open it up for Q&A until about morning tea, until someone calls. Yeah, it's morning tea time. Okay, sound all right? Kia ora. Well, over to you, Manu. Kia ora.
Kei te tautoko au te mihi tō tātou kaihanga, ngā mihi ki ngā mate, ki te haukainga, tainui Ngāti Haua, tēnā koe John. Kia koutou katoa, tēnei te mihi mai oha mihi mahana kia koutou. Ko ai au, he uri tēnei no Ngāti Pukenga, kōpū kairo o te maunga, Waikato te awa, rangataua te tāhuna, ngā peke te whenua, Ngāti Haua hoki, ko Manu Caddie tōku ingoa, and I thought I had 15 minutes, so I'm a little bit, now I've got 10, so I'm just going to speed present. So I'm representing a few entities, been involved in co-founding a few companies and charitable entities, and just this month become a real researcher, and will be based here a little bit of my time. So speaking a bit from that experience, and working with a number of taonga species, with a number of kaitiaki partners around the motu over a number of years. So yeah, Aotearoa's got a huge set of taonga that have been bestowed upon us and entrusted to us. Some of the largest collections of diversity in the world within any country. We've been separated from the rest of the world for a long time, and didn't have people here for a long time. And a really high proportion of the indigenous species here are only found here. Unfortunately, when our tupuna come, they burned a lot of the bush, about a third of it, destroyed a number of species in the process that will never, well, we'll see what happens with genetic modification, but for now won't see them for a while. And when Europeans came, sort of finished a lot of them off, and so we're left with about a quarter of what we had, and many of those species gone. We burnt the bush with a pace, and this is just sort of put a bit of context. I've been living in Tairāwhiti 25 years. We cleared the land, had a golden period, then sort of mid-20th century realised that wasn't such a good idea, and this is what we've ended up with, and this is the landscape that we're dealing with now. We thought pine trees might help, and did create some mahi for a while, but have had its own problems as well, and we've seen whole forests now collapse, and the impacts on communities, but also this sort of desertification really of the region, given our susceptibility to erosion. This is the context in our region, and different regions will have their own challenges, whether it's intensive dairy or other industries that have had an impact on biodiversity. Needless to say, yeah, we've got a huge crisis, and I'm just trying to sort of, why do we do biodiscovery? And for me, this is part of it. I thought I'd drop this one in there from the Minister, both for Y262 and Conservation, who said this week we've kind of got to give up on a few species, we're not going to make it, could cost billions or trillions, and then he said, oh, but no one's actually worked out how much it could cost, so I don't know why he said that, but yeah, a few issues there. And just some things, you know, these, I think these are truisms. We're just another species. We're trying to, often we think of ourselves as super special, and we are, but we're also just one of many species. And those other species on the planet have a right to be there and to share it, and we haven't treated them very well. And then sort of flipping over into that's sort of the ecological, environmental taiao aspect, but the economic one. New Zealand is very heavily reliant on those primary industries still that based on the land that was cleared, and that's really funding our lifestyles to have all of the stuff that we enjoy. Of course, many of our whānau live on a lot less than many of us, and bit of degrowth and relying less on much of those imports wouldn't be a bad thing for the country. But as long as we keep importing that stuff, we're going to need to keep making money. We hear a lot about the Māori economy. I was a bit nervous putting this one in with Jason in the room, but and I did a little bit of research and found that in 2021, Māori exports were only about 1% of the total national export, so we're a very small part of how we earn foreign exchange into this country. And if you look at where the Māori asset base is, most of it is, or the economic transactions happen well outside of those high-value export areas. And most of our transactions are at a domestic level. So I guess my motivation for biodiscovery is both sort of thinking about how can we help the environment, how can we try and fix some of those or prevent further loss, and also how Māori going to create other economic opportunities for ourselves, given otherwise we're just competing against everybody else in the country and overseas and industries that already exist. Kind of the two unique things we have for sale are our culture and stories, and we've done well on tourism, but as the climate crisis intensifies, we're going to see less people travelling. Maybe the higher value customers will still be coming, and the other is our biodiversity, though we don't get to control it, given there's no real legislative protections in place. But those are the unique things that make us Māori and are there, available for us to utilise. I'm not going to dwell on Y262, just wanted to acknowledge that and the whānau that have held that kaupapa for generations now. I'm not going to spend time on Nagoya. I think nobody put their hand up to say they didn't know what Nagoya is, but we could have a whole conference on Nagoya and Aotearoa, and we need to do a bit more work on that. Hopefully it is part of the discussion today. And I won't talk too much about the treaty that was just signed in Geneva, but we'll touch on it. And I was hoping Katie Lee might talk about Article 8J of the CBD, but she said she's not going to. But that's very focused on DSI, digital sequence information, and really important. And just in sort of the global context, in terms of why biodiscovery is interesting and an opportunity as well as a risk, is that there's these massive global markets that have been growing, and people want to be healthy. Our lifestyles don't make us very healthy, but they also want natural products rather than artificial ones, and so there's growing markets there. And of course our pharmaceutical industry is not largely, there's a good portion though that's still based on natural organisms, and the history certainly is based on plants and other medicinal organisms for treating human and animal health issues. And I just probably want to acknowledge that, rongoa is particular to here, but the traditions of plant medicine are across every culture and community in the world. We're not unique in that sense, and as we heard today, around the Pacific and all around the world, back through history, Europeans have a strong tradition of plant medicine. So just touching on some projects I've been involved with, these are 4 or 5, and trying to kind of think about how to represent them late last night. On the circles there are sort of, the more red you can see, the less progressed the project is, or the venture. These are all commercial development projects, and some are very progressed. The Kānuka one is the third one along, and we're just about to receive the term sheet on quite a significant deal with a US company. Still may not go through, that's why there's still a bit of red there, but that will be a bit of a game changer for the Kānuka oil industry in Aotearoa, should that come through. And then others like the berry project that's really just starting, but some interesting discoveries there already. And it's awesome to see some of our collaborators in the room. The one on the left is a bryophyte that we'll be talking a bit more about publicly shortly, but have and the lines there are sort of, if you're above the line, you're a commercial, financial beneficial stakeholder in the project. If you're below it, you're a collaborator and partner. There's some companies involved, but they're not IP owners in these projects. That's just what that line means. And down the bottom there, it's sort of like pharmaceuticals, the bottle with the cross on it. Next to that on the left is nutraceutical type products. And the second one along with the hand-holding stuff, that's my symbol I found last night for, we're not going to call it rongoa, but a therapeutic product derived from a taonga species that is in a non-commercial context. So that's the fungi, psilocybe fungi project that we're trying to make a non-commercial project, but obviously someone's going to have to produce it. My time's up. Kānuka, some lessons learnt. I won't go through all of this, but spent the last 7 years working on that, and there's some common issues I think that will apply across other, sorry, you're allowed to take photos, don't listen to the thing, or I can send the presentation out, because I'm not going to go through all of this, but there's some unique challenges and opportunities working with Māori communities and landowners and tribal structures and investors. So yeah, some big challenges, but exciting opportunities as well to work through together. Sometimes things don't work out. This was a kina project, and we just decided it wasn't commercially viable, but the evidence is there, it stays with the hapu that were involved. There's still other kina research going on that it may see the light of day one day. This is a resource just published on our tuwairoa.org website that explores treaty issues around controlled drugs that are derived from taonga species and some changes that we need to see in the legislation, and that's working its way towards a tribunal hearing. So yeah, there's a few projects we're working on with psychoactive substances from taonga species that will be needing some provisions made in the Misuse of Drugs Act and Medicines Act. This is super exciting one. Just acknowledge my plant and food research colleagues here, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Hinirangi, Te Kaurawa Maki partners, and really interesting in this one is we've spent a lot of time working with this little innocuous bryophyte, understanding how it grows and produces interesting compounds, and what those compounds can do in animals. So Mitch here is working on some animal studies, but we've also identified the mātauranga that's held by the plant, and thought about how we include the plant in the ecosystem that supported it for 400 million years since it came out of the waters, to be beneficiaries. So it's not just about the communities that are beneficiaries, but the ecosystem as a financial stakeholder in the venture as well. And this one's probably going towards a pharmaceutical, and so it's taken quite a while, but it's super interesting and exciting project, and we're going to publish a couple of papers in the next few months on this. And there's patents involved in that one. So interestingly, in the kaitiaki and the and creating an entity that represents the interests of the taonga to make decisions about what's patentable and what's sellable and licensable and all those sort of things is where we're heading with that one. Just this one, working with some other researchers on AI-assisted things and all of that, brings up lots of issues when we're dealing with compounds derived from taonga species. I'm not going to dwell too much on that. Needless to say, it's coming, and if we don't do it, someone else is doing it already. This is a complicated diagram of the benefit share arrangements in the Kānuka project. We've set up this national Kānuka Charitable Trust that's like the Manuka Charitable Trust. We talked to them, they're really busy fighting trademarks and said go for it and come and join us later on when we've got some space. But that's there, owned by Māori and trying to learn the lessons from the Manuka honey debacle so that we don't repeat them and make sure we've got the IP locked down as much as we can before we launch globally and anyone cares about it, which is really hard because no one cares about it, no one wants to put any money into it. Everyone knows that you should. This is where the thinking's come to with how we do the benefit share between the taonga and its ecosystem, the entity representing their interests, the entity representing kaitiaki interests, both those who are engaged, to Sandra's point, and those who are yet to be engaged, and how we protect, free, prior, and informed consent is a bit tricky when you don't know something's going on, and if you don't get around everybody, you can't do anything, and yeah, so some challenges there, but we've progressed anyway, and yeah, how it works with investment and R&D activity until we know there's something worthwhile going and talking to people about, and then, yeah, sort of, we can talk a bit more about that, but Bruce and Salua here? No. But there's some great, templates that we hope to be able to share and things for that going forward. This is Salua's diagram that she's working on that's even more complicated, but won't go into that. So needless to say, I sort of guess the vision is a really more diverse economy that relies on our taonga rather than some of those other primary industries that we've grown accustomed to. We'll see where it all ends up. And these are a set of questions that I wrestle with on a regular basis, and some of them have been raised already today. So yeah, and there are many more, but just thought I'd share those.
Far out. Man, hohunu rawa atu nā mātauranga I roti e ua nā mahi. There's just so much mātauranga in the mahi and the slides that you've shared with us. Hopefully, are you able to share those slides? Oh, thank you. Kia ora. Because I've already had people asking about them, so it's awesome. So thank you very much for those opening remarks. It's awesome. Now I'm going to invite our panellists to one at a time to just sort of introduce themselves, tell us about who they are and their mahi, and the message for today. So 5 minutes each, and Wallace is keeping track of our time. So kia ora. We're going to start at the end and then come this way. So over to you, Michela. Kia ora.
That's kind of why I said at the end, so I kind of didn't have to talk that much. Kia ora tātou, ko Michela Anderson tōku ingoa, Ngāti Kaungunu, Ngāti Ranginui, Ngā Iwi. I basically got roped into step here because I'm in a lot of things, but I work for the university, based in the Tauranga campus in education, but I'm also part of a whānau who owns a agribusiness, and we specialise in mamaku. So recently did a report and looking basically similar to Manu's kōrero actually, in terms of discovering something and how can whānau make economic benefits, and that dual side of economic but also being culturally responsible with your whānau and stuff like that. So that's basically why I'm here. Basically looking at provenance, authenticity and certification and traceability in terms of an approach for businesses or whānau when they are commercialising something, taonga species, what's a way for whānau but businesses to be transparent and responsible in that space. Because it's a lot, once you get to that commercial space, it takes a long time to get there, and when you kind of get there, there's a lot of other responsibilities that are in your face. And so it's about just balancing that of economic, but also really just being held accountable for protecting the species, but also involving whānau and getting them involved in that whole process there. Yeah, so basically just did a report as part of the Science Challenge, literally on PACT, that's how I call it, really, so provenance, authenticity and traceability, and currently doing my PhD, and Jason's my supervisor on that, really. And I've just added certification in that because when you look at provenance, which is the story or the origin of something, then authenticity is kind of aligned with that. Traceability communicates all of that from the story to the consumer and backwards, but actually certification kind of fits into that because what makes it valid and all those kinds of things, and it's all based in what's legal within your own country. So yeah, that's basically me, and I'll stop there. Yeah, kia ora.
No, Clem. Kia ora rā tātou. Ko Laine Fisher tōku ingoa, huri tēnei no moriori no kaitahu hoki, ko kai whakahaere no te Puni Kokiri. Big mihi to you, Manu. I don't think your 10-minute presentation did you justice in terms of the amount of mahi that sits behind those slides, including in Waipo, where your mahi enabled us to be able to really push in some spaces that we wouldn't have if we didn't have that really strong kōrero coming from you. So huge mihi to you there. So we recently have had our parameters kind of change in Te Puni Kokiri, i.e., the government's changed and what we are focused on, what we're seeking to achieve, and all of those things. And it's a tough time in the public service. We find out at 2 o'clock today what our restructure looks like, so it's quite shifting sands, to be fair. But one of the things our chief executive always says is that we're quite missional people. 80% of Te Puni Kokiri is whakapapa Māori, so live, breathe it, and working within those parameters is really important for us. And so it's been about how do we reassess what we can do in this time. We have that kind of steward role, which government likes to talk about, in terms of how do we continue and maintain the mahi. And sometimes, as we heard earlier, it's useful for government to be in there, and quite often not. So we're looking at where it's useful for us to be in there at the moment, given our parameters. One of the things we realised quite quickly was this Waipo treaty, and so really pushed hard on that, and got the ability to be there and do what we could to really get that ratified. It was an interesting time, and I hope we do get to have a kōrero around it, but I think the one thing that I would probably share is that there is a lot of things and a lot of learnings out there that we should look to build into Aotearoa. And one of the things we need to do is keep progressing on the awesome mahi that people like Keti and Leo, 262 are doing, and others, that we need to make sure that regardless of which way the tide's coming or going, we keep progressing and finding those sort of opportunities. So I'll leave it at that. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. No mai, thank you all for coming today, and thank you for the organising people to make this happen, so kia ora. Ko waio, ko taupiri te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Mahuta, ko Ngāti Ngāhua Hapu, ko Mitchell Head tōku ingoa, no Nārua Wahia hau. Kia ora, I'm here at Te Kotahi Research Institute. I've got a background in science, and I've been really fascinated by the potential of taonga species for improving mental health of whānau, and I'm really honoured to be working with Manu and John with Ngāti Hawa on a couple of interesting projects that could potentially help whānau improve mental health and hauora in general. So yeah, I think it's a really important thing to be doing, to be working with hapu and ensuring that the benefits are for them, because that's what this is all about. So kia ora, thank you all for coming today.
Awesome. Kia ora tātou. So we're going to open it up for questions for our panellists. So we've got the mic there. So anyone like to kick us off with a question? Oh yes, Ana. Kia ora.
Tēnā tātou, ko Vanessa Clark tōku ingoa, ko au te pauhere Kanapu. I'm the Executive Director of Kanapu, and we are about growing capacity of Māori researchers, scientists and our hapori Māori and traditional knowledge holders. My question relates to FTAs, and I'm not sure who's the right person who might be able to comment on that, and it's not Willie John, so I'm hoping it's someone in the panel. But if we are about growing capacity in our whānau to be able to stay in their places and spaces, whakapapa whenua, people in country, what we would like to avoid is getting to a point where once they're doing their magic, they go through a commercialisation process only to find they're locked out. Because either we've given it away in an FTA, or it's been heavily patented and all of those other things mean that our whānau are locked out. So I'm not sure who might be the best place to answer the question, but where can we be influencing in the FTAs? And I know ngā toki whakarururanga aren't in the room. Kia ora.
I think they'll land with me. So part of Te Puni Kokiri's mahi is to work with Foreign Affairs and Trade on free trade agreements. We, I would say that understanding and practice has been developing, and we know from Y2522 around the CPTPP, is that comprehensive? It's an acronym I can't even break down, so it's that. And so I think there's some strong learnings from there that the government has really taken on board, and we have ngā toki whakarururanga and te taumata as well, kind of in that space. I think there's a long way to go, and I think one of the things as part of the free trade process is that there's definitely better understanding now about what these mean, and as you've articulated, we kind of go to do it, and then all of a sudden we realise someone's already sold that ability to do it. So I think an understanding and having the kōrero with government is really important to make sure those key people hear it. For where I sit in Te Puni Kokiri is less involved in that directly, but that's something we always want to encourage, is having the kōrero. So in the pipeline, and these things are kind of public, the government's been talking about India and starting to look at other countries as well. So there's definitely more coming on that. So I'd really encourage people to keep an eye on it, and I'll make sure that Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade are kind of out there doing the mahi. Kia ora.
Kia ora, good question. And we've later on today we've got a panel looking at the relationship between benefit sharing and Indigenous trade, international trade. So it'll be a good question to pose to that panel, and we've got a panellist in the room who's on that panel too. So good question, thank you. Any other questions? Kia ora, down the back there.
Kia ora, I'm Chagasala from EnviroStrat. This is a question linked going from compliance and FTAs onto the voluntary market. And we see these days, especially when we think about our connection internationally through private sector policies and so on, we see at times that CSR and license to operate and so on can be more effective in terms of getting traction and so on. what is the view, and I'm not sure who in the panel, what is the view around the ability to leverage the focus on nature-related disclosures, for example, which is a strong move kind of following the climate-related disclosure and so on. Do we have hooks that we can use in terms of what we are doing here? And if we do, how would be possible to progress something like that?
I can talk a little to that, not much, but yeah, I think one of the biggest opportunities and risks we have is the development of a biodiversity market or whatever those financial incentives might end up being for protecting and improving biodiversity. I think one of the frustrations I've had is that we don't have commitments at a national level yet for, or internationally binding commitments. We've had various biodiversity strategies and things from central government, but New Zealand, I think it's COP16 in Colombia in October. The expectation is that countries will go there and present what their plan is, and they have to have it submitted by January next year, I think. In my conversations with DOC, Department of Conservation, and Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and others, it's pretty low on the priority level, and they've all had staff cuts and things, and I just worry that they say that they're doing some engagement and consultation with Māori, but haven't really been transparent or clear about the depth and breadth of that yet, and haven't supported Māori, as I understand it, to really get together and work out what our collective view might be on those commitments. And so that, because until we have those commitments, the market kind of, it's a bit like carbon markets, we probably won't, the voluntary, it's great to have some corporates overseas who want to do it, but they're doing it for mostly a PR sort of exercise, and so I think until we get those binding commitments, it's difficult to establish the markets. And as we've seen with the carbon market, that can create all sorts of perverse incentives and other problems that were unforeseen. So I'm a little nervous about it at the same time.
Kia ora. Another question at the front here?
Or a comment.
At the back? Yeah, at the back, and then we'll come at the front here.
Tēnā koutou. How can legal agreements be used to protect the legitimate interests of kaitiaki and taonga in the absence of right-based regulatory protections from the Crown and or Māori? That's the fourth question down.
Kia ora whakapātai.
Bruce. So Bruce Hickman there is a legal advisor with Plant and Food, and he's been very helpful for my thinking about some of this stuff, and he's going to grab the mic. But essentially, yeah, we're looking at ways that commercial, normal civil agreements can, as I sort of touched on in some of those diagrams, be used in the absence of regulation to say, we've got two parties who are going to agree on these things. And
it's a tricky pātai. I think with certification, and the hard thing is you have those themes of organic, natural products and so forth, and I don't really know if there is autonomy still within that space, really. Even as a whānau, if you are to commercialise something and you get to a stage of we need to kind of make sure that it's not going to go, not fraudulently or copycats overseas, that's fine, but stay true and pono to what you're doing as a whānau and whatever you're commercialising. So I think for certification, and depending on what area you're in, whether it's skincare or something like that, you're only able to touch base or reach out or apply what's already there. And a lot of it is, not through a Māori, like there's no Māori labelling in terms of what certification would look like. So you're only limited to what's already in place. And I'm just giving like organic things example, or like eczema certification and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a tricky space. It's just, you're kind of limited to what you can do with whatever the parameters are already here in Aotearoa specifically. So, yeah, for us, we just can only follow that avenue, but then it's a matter of, is that the right certification? Is that keeping with the taonga species itself? Does it fit? Does it align with the whānau who are suppliers? All that kind of stuff. So it's, it's a bit of a tricky area. Yeah, but just fitting in with what's already in place, but it would be great to see in future what we verify as pono and certified through our lens, and that'll be cool, yeah.
Kia ora, Michela.
Touching too on the certification, Daniel mentioned the Union for Ethical Biotrade, and that's based on the 7 UN principles around what does ethical sourcing look like, and our company went through the registration process, one of them, and we were the first in Aotearoa to do it, and no one's done it since, and it surprised me that it wasn't something that was already common here. And that's sort of a globally recognised, and it's not addressing those kaupapa issues that we still need to develop our own stuff around. And then there's, I don't know if the local context kind of biocultural labels can be another mechanism for embedding some of those protections, at least flag it for consumers and along the supply chain.
Kia ora, thank you. There's just a comment from Bruce, and then we're going to go to the question over
Kia
here.
ora koutou. Just picking up on your question about what can be done in the absence of a regulatory framework. Somewhere around 4 or 5 years ago, Stacey Fitiora from Plant and Food championed within the company that we needed to be doing something, because that was prior to the all of government announcing their response to Y262. Nothing had happened for a lengthy period of time, and we needed to make progress in our ability to interact and to form partnerships with our Māori partners. So we're being held back effectively by what is, in essence, a clash between Indigenous rights and how they operate and our Western legal system, which is all based on individual rights as opposed to collective rights. So we go into a negotiation with a Māori entity and we say, hey, look, we're bringing all this intellectual property that we own, that we've developed as a CRI, and, well, you're not bringing any intellectual property because your knowledge doesn't qualify as intellectual property. It's been passed down through generations, and under the Patents Act, novelty is being destroyed. So how do you form a partnership with someone if you say you're not bringing anything to the table? We're representing a Crown Research Institute. We're bringing the knowledge to the table because it begs the question, why are we wanting to interact with people if we're not acknowledging what they bring to the table? Now, clearly, as an organisation, we do recognise and acknowledge the contribution that our Māori partners bring in terms of their mātauranga and their kaitiakitanga over the taonga species. So what Stacey championed with our board of directors was that we would voluntarily adopt our own practice, even though we're not required by law to do so. So we introduced a set of Māori taonga species and mātauranga Māori principles based simply on the Nagoya Protocol. So we've committed that we won't access any Indigenous taonga species without prior informed consent and without agreeing to access and benefit sharing arrangements. So we've adopted that voluntarily. And then the mechanism we've simply used is the law of contract. The basic concept that you have freedom of contract. Anything that is not illegal or not contrary to public policy can be agreed between two contracting parties. So that's the mechanism we've used. The view being we can't wait for government. This is not a case where we want to keep government out, but government wasn't coming to the party, so we started the party on our own. We've said we will sit down with our Māori partners and we will work our own way forward using the law of contract, because when I define intellectual property in a contract, I can define it to include mātauranga Māori. I can define it to include anything I want. And that's the way we've recognised the contribution of our Māori partners. So, no, it may not qualify under a definition in the Patents Act, but I'm not relying on the Patents Act, I'm relying on the law of contract. And so that's essentially the mechanism that we've used. That'll underpin the arrangements we're still trying to work our way through in that example that Manu put up on the board. We're working through how this is going to work in in practice with our kaitiaki partners and with our commercial partners. But in essence, whatever we agree in that room amongst the kaitiaki partners and the commercial partners will simply be recorded, and as between the parties in the law of contract, it's all perfectly legally enforceable and binding.
Kia ora. Pātai at the front here.
Kia ora, Miriana Stevens, Waikato Corporation. My question is, we've raised a lot of issues, and actually about a month ago I was at the celebration of the Mātātua Declaration, and so same issues 30 years ago that we're presenting here today. So my question is, where does the leadership come from? You know, if you think of if you prioritise some of those issues, you know, how could we get together? And I guess my other question is then, how can that be resourced? Because we've been missing, if I'm honest, in the international fora. You know, a few years ago we had a lot of our people up there at Waipo, wherever. I don't think we've got too many people, if not any, there. That's my question is, you know, where does the leadership come from and how can that be resourced? And I'm looking at you, Laine, because, you know, and others, but it's just like, I don't want to, you know, I brought my daughter here. I think she's gone for coffee 30 minutes ago. But I don't want her to be here, you know, in another 30 years grappling with the same issues. It's time and we've got to get going.
Kia ora. Over to the panel.
Maybe just to give Laine not a free pass, but he can have a think about getting his thoughts together. Waipo was really interesting. We did have majority of the New Zealand delegation were Māori, which was probably a first, because MB and MFAT didn't turn up, but that was to our advantage probably. But yeah, it's a total, you know, and I'm always sad that we're not better organised in those international processes. Just getting an entity of some sort together feels like a good start to say we're going to cooperate amongst those of us who have been or want to go or are involved in these issues, rather than ad hoc sort of process which is pretty arbitrary in the way they select participants and the way we nominate ourselves or get nominated and who we go to represent and what mandate and accountability we have back to our own communities, let alone Māoridom and things. So I think, yeah, building a network that is focused on those international arrangements feels overdue, as you say, and we have dropped the ball a bit. And how to resource it, I think Laine does his best in trying to sort of support where he can, but obviously limited. If, you know, we don't want the government to be funding stuff, and they will fund some of these international funds, which then comes back around to select who gets to go and be supported. But it's really sort of at the Māori entity level that we need to see the value of it and raise the profile, and I guess that's what some of us have been trying to do to help our whānau understand the value and importance of participation and commitment to these processes that are really impactful. And Māori have a lot to offer, but also a lot to learn. And there's some awesome opportunities to collaborate with international partners, particularly Indigenous communities around the world, to are much more advanced than we like to think that we're doing really well, but we're getting left behind in these issues. So that was a bit of an eye-opener as well.
Kia ora.
Yeah, I kind of just follow on from that, and thanks, Miriana. I was hoping you wouldn't ask what are we actually going to do. I'm not too sure yet. We're basically still having the conversation with our minister around where he sees the priority around this mahi, and it is within a constrained fiscal environment and all those things that I need to say, but we've been pushing and pressing upon him the importance of this, and he's building his understanding of it, and hopefully in the kind of coming months we'll have a clearer steer around this. It often, the framing often fits in the economic space, and so it's about how do we protect to enable the economic kind of outcomes. Yes, yeah, exactly, and all that sort of stuff. So it's about how we fit in the bigger picture rather than leading out. So, there's a lot of kōrero within government around what does the new economic strategy look like and how do we fit in there and that sort of stuff. So we're, as Te Puni Kokiri, really pushing on that, and I'm hoping from that then we'll have some clarity to be able to then say, here's what we can do, and make sure that we can actually deliver some stuff, because we're trying to do everything at once, as you're touching on. We're going to be here again in 30 years. But yeah, this is why it's important for us to be here as well, is just to keep hearing the kōrero and make sure we are connected and listening, and keen to having the kōrero as well, so keep reaching out.
Kia ora. And I think just to add to that, I mean, if there's any proposals around leading, organising and resourcing that's needed, maybe that's a good kaupapa for cup of tea time and also lunchtime. And so by the end of the day, we might have a proposal to put to the floor and see, well, okay, who's leading, who's organising, who's resourcing? What are the options there to actually progress the mahi that's in front of us, notwithstanding the current fiscal constraints and so forth? So, no, awesome pātai. We've got about a couple more minutes, and I just wanted to invite Michela and Mitchell just to sort of expand on their sort of experiences around the work that you're doing, particularly Michela in terms of your whānau enterprise. Just tell us a little bit more about the whānau business, and then how that's kind of being enabled through the provenance, the pack, the framework that you're working with. And then Mitchell, just touch on a little bit more about your science and how the incredible work that you're doing is being sort of enabled or not, or otherwise, with the current sort of frameworks that we're working within. So Michela, kia ora.
Such a nervous thing to talk about. I guess we're a little bit under the radar, but Mamaku Skin is our whānau business under Ora Innovation. We've been going for about 13 years now, but just starting to pick up a few things internationally now, I guess. I guess in terms of the pact, I'm just going to say the pat, because I haven't done the s in it yet. So in terms of benefit sharing, we actually don't deal with iwi or hapu, we actually deal with whānau. And so for us, we feel that's where it should begin. So we deal with local whānau, Māori land blocks who have mamaku in their whenua and would like to know more about mamaku. What they already have may be something other native, and so we kind of look at some opportunities there that they could use and start up there. So a couple of the blocks are actually my own whānau block, so I guess I'm just really lucky that I've been gifted whenua from whānau, and I'm just really fortunate that the block has mamaku, so there's that aspect as well. But yeah, so we do all sorts of things. When we're starting to commercialise things, we think about, okay, if we're going to put some sort of QR code on the packaging, how does the whānau want to be represented in this? Because it's easy for us to kind of make pūtea and also have that brand out, but actually it's our whānau that's the most important part, otherwise we wouldn't have mamaku. And we don't want to deal with big iwi entities at this stage. So we basically get their stories. Every whānau is different. Some want to share, a certain amount, and some don't. And then we think about when the QR code is on there, what does it look like in terms of a landing page, and how do they want to be represented in this product as well? So that's kind of part of our benefit sharing there. So whānau is the number one for us before we get to hapu and to iwi, because we feel that it doesn't trickle down as so forth as fast as we would like it. So so we just deal with whānau in that way. But I just basically, I guess naturally I've just kind of, as kids, it's actually my mum and my aunties that actually own this, but as kids we've just naturally been roped into it. So we just all have our set jobs, and my job is to deal with the blocks And so, yeah, we just visit them and think about how they're going, how's it growing. We do all sorts of things, tikanga and looking at their whenua. We've been really lucky with some other funding, like from MB and SFFF fund and stuff like that, just to think about stuff that they could look at that they may want to do besides mamaku, all that kind of thing. So for us, it's about not just about us as a business, but what do they already have that they may want to do for their own whānau. What we've actually got from it is some whānau are just happy to just do a nursery, you know, and grow their own local rongoa and stuff like that, and then just keep it in the community. So if they're happy with that, we're happy with that too. So yeah, that's basically it, really. It's still early stages, but, you know, it's really tough that it's this thing of, oh, there they go, what are they doing? What are they giving back? But actually, a lot of people don't know what actually is happening behind the scenes, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. Yeah, the traceability is going to be an interesting one, because it's about keeping that pono-ness of how can we safeguard the mamaku here in Aotearoa so it doesn't end up like the manuka, because we know there's lots of thousands of various ferns worldwide. So it's all that kind of stuff, whether it's the term that we protect or, yeah, the genetic or the whakapapa of it. We need to figure out a way to do that. But it involves a lot of things, not just us as a company, but we're in partnership with a lot of things happening at the moment. But yeah, that's about it. It's a tough project.
No, it's awesome. Yeah. Mitchell.
Yep. So I guess we're kind of at an interesting interface between the scientific paradigm and the mātauranga Māori, and so it's an interesting project to try and combine these. So we have a great PhD student at the back here, Robin, who's doing some interesting work that's sort of exploring the potential of these different taonga species. And that's generally a really expensive process, so trying to resource that is challenging. And then trying to support the whānau's interest of what they would like to explore needs to be paramount, and that's where everything else comes from. So yes, we can do some cool work to look at how does these taongas influence the brain, but yeah, trying to balance the mātauranga and the science, maintaining tikanga and all of that in the way that we're interacting with the taonga is very important, and it can be a challenge because they come from different values. One's really interested in trying to publish quickly, and that can have tension between mātauranga, so that's an interesting challenge as well. But yeah, just big mihi to Robin at the back doing all the work on the research at the moment. Kia ora. Yeah.
Kia ora. Always someone behind the scenes making stuff happen. I'd just like to, for us to join me in thanking our panel for their awesome presentation.